YeahThisMilk starring
Arcane Thought. I've heard people speak volumes about this country, about the hypocrisy of our democracy. See, America got strange fruit. Well, if you ever wonder why it produces strange fruit, if you check back in the history books, you'll find out that it has strange roots. I live in a society where I read in black ink, but regardless of what's penned, I'm told to read the blank space in between the lines because that's where the real information lies. And all that other information is just lies. And I've tried to hide most of my visual distaste for the unjust and injustice that seemingly occurs to just us, the lower and middle class. While I find myself constantly tolerating those without any class now, I am not a revolutionary. See, revolution is just an idea. Ideas are in your mind, and if you're not trying to be something positive, then you're thoroughly wasting my time. And it's only through blessings that I've been given the gift of penmanship and the opportunity to be a beacon of truth. And the truth is that while you're grumbling and mumbling about your situation, money is yelling real loud from the oil company, medical industry, and other big corporations through a megaphone from atop Capitol Hill, saying things like, I know you don't have any money, but we still sending you a bill. And one more thing, you've been robbed. You working over 40 hours a week, still can't make ends meet at that job. I've heard people speak volumes about this country, saying it's the land where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Old cliches, but it's a new day and a new age, because nowadays it's more like the rich, well, they still getting richer, but the poor get shipped off to war and the middle class gets overtaxed. And when you're looking for a career, please don't show up with a high school diploma. They're prepared to tell you you're not qualified. Oh, hold up, you got a college degree, but I bet you don't have any experience. Oh wait, you got experience? Thanks for coming out. Now we think you're overqualified. Hold up. So you mean to tell us that it's a bad thing to be capable of doing the jobs that we're applying for? That's nonsense. So then you find yourself working some dead-end job or two trying to make ends meet. But don't worry, because before you start to complain, that economic stimulus check is already in the mail to sedate you. Meanwhile, profiting politicians are getting their palms greased by the oil companies who financially rape you, and those malfunctioning traffic cameras at miscellaneous intersections that turn red after about a fraction of a second done snapped your picture a couple of times. And guess what? Now they mailing out fines. So the government broke you off a little $600 lump. Well, even if you didn't blow it on junk or run into one of life's infamous speed bumps, bet that stimulus check is still going by the end of the month. But don't worry, because Uncle Sam needs you to enlist, to fight in a foreign country for oil and international businesses, so his constituents can sit back comfortably in their big houses with their big salaries and their bonuses from, well, whatever large industry is paying them to form legislation in their favor. And the peace of mind of knowing that when war times roll around, it ain't they kids dying. I'm trying to make sense of the madness. The economy's downward spiral has us all beyond sadness. Got us thinking and feeling like we all gonna crash right along with the NASDAQ. They got folks thinking that money talks and BS walks, but we've been through this, right? Money doesn't talk, it yells through a megaphone from atop Capitol Hill, and BS doesn't walk, it runs for political offices. There we go.
Arcane Thought. How you doing, brother?
Feeling great, man. What's happening?
Hey, how long did it take you to write that piece, man?
Raising Down is that was actually part one of part two, and I wrote it all at once. It was originally one large poem that took 9 months to put together. I wrote it during Barack Obama's first political campaign, so basically, like, as stuff was happening, I was writing. So it was like, a little bit more happened, write. A little bit more happened, write some more stuff in response. And by the time 9 months rolled around, I had this huge, like, poem, and I was like, this is a lot of stuff. I mean, 9 months is a long time to put together a poem, but I think it was worth it, because I think there was a lot of important points being made in it.
Most definitely. I like the way you break things down for our people, whereas though anybody can understand it. You don't make it so far to reach, whereas though you just tune it out. You know what I mean? Because you make it simplistic yet complicated at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like, okay, when I write a poem, and a lot of times I call this like blue collar poetry. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is for like the masses. This ain't for the people that's that's really well off. This ain't for definitely not for the 1%. It's for the people that's that's going to work every day. That's got these bills to pay every day. It's for the people that may not know where their next rent payment is going to come up with. You know, they don't know all that. You know, this is like for them. So, you know, when I'm writing, it's got to be formatted in a way where it's clever to, you know, the point where I'm making the points, but like I'm making those solid points. You know
Most
what I'm
definitely.
saying?
Most
So,
definitely.
but people can get what I'm saying. You know, it's not. I'm not using you know, like the $20 catalog of words. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
you know, I might throw a couple in like every now and then. You know, just, you know, brother's educated. You know what I'm saying? But you know, the thing that makes communication work is when your audience understands what you're talking about.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Where were you raised? Make us feel like we was raised with you. Tell us about how you was raised and where you was raised, where you was born and everything.
Oh man. Okay, so I was born and raised in Toledo, Ohio. That's northwest Ohio. It's almost clear into Michigan, so it's like top, you know, west corner of Ohio. I was raised in. What I thought was at the time a middle class home. Apparently, it was a lower middle class. I guess by today's standards, middle class means, you know, like a suburban family. You know what I'm saying? Where you got like, you know, two families. You know, or you got two, you know, like parents. You know, making, you know, like, you know, 150,000, like, you know, combined or something like that. And you know, I don't know what my parents, you know, were making at the time, but you know, they made sure that we, you know, we had what we needed, but we weren't upper middle class by any means. It was still like, you know, urban area, you know, like inner city, you know, black neighborhood, you know what I'm saying. So one of the comforting things about like where I grew up at was, you know, like everybody looked like me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my parents always made sure that when they sent me to school, it was always, you know, whatever the best school was that they could afford, that's where they were sending me. So when I was at home, you know, in my neighborhood, like around like, you know, my people, you know what I'm saying, like it was just that, it was my peoples, you know. But you know, when I was at school, a lot of times, you know, the people didn't look like me. You know, they be a couple of us like sprinkled in there, but you know, we were the you know, the chocolate chips in the cookie.
Right.
You know, to put it bluntly, but you know, my parents, you know, they always strive to make sure that, you know, not only do we have like everything we need, you know, like food, water, shelter, clothing, and, you know, like opportunity. They always wanted to make sure that we were always on a upward path, you know. So anytime that we needed like correction, you know, as far as like our direction, our trajectory in life, like that's what they were there for. So, you know, I did come from like a 2-parent household, and I do remember, like, you know, when I was growing up, you know, because, you know, I used to hang out with like, you know, the neighborhood kids. I noticed that there weren't a lot of, you know, like other fathers around, and some of it was because, you know, like, you know, a lot of, you know, my friends, you know, fathers, you know, like had abandoned them, like, you know, some of them were locked up, and some of them, you know, had like passed away. So it was always like different reasons, but I don't recall like meeting like a lot of like my friends' fathers. Like I met a lot of their mothers, but I don't remember meeting a lot of their fathers. So, you know, when a lot of them would come like over, you know, like over my parents' place, you know, like our house, it was kind of like my dad kind of became like the neighborhood dad, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of like, you know, like that guy, you know, he was, you know, the one that was, you know, that was there, that was, you know, going to work, the one that was, you know, trying to make sure like his kids had, you know, everything that he could, that was within his power to give, you know.
Most
my parents weren't rich or anything like that, you know what I'm saying, but we weren't, you know, poor, you know, like, or destitute, like, you know, either. So it's kind of like we were like in that middle range, I guess what you would call hood rich.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's a little bit about you know, you know, Toledo, Ohio, and, you know, like where I grew up. You know, I mean, how personal you want me to get?
No, we can go as far as you want to go. And because the thing is, it's like whatever you ready to say, and then I'll take you somewhere else. Go.
Okay. Okay. So growing up, you know, I never really felt like, you know, like I was the most like popular person. You know what I'm saying? Like it was kind of like I was like awkward, like when I was a kid. and it was kind of like I was a student of watching how people were interacting like with each other,
Mm-hmm.
and it was kind of like an art that I had to perfect because I was super awkward at one point. Like I couldn't really talk or converse with anybody.
Right.
Not for lack of like vocabulary or anything like that, but it was kind of like when you're trying to communicate with people, it's not just the words. Some of it's tone, some of it's body language. Some of it's like relatability. Like topics and subject matter, and it was like part of like being awkward was I didn't know how to like catalog or organize any of that. So as I got older, like I learned how humor worked. Humor was like the first way that I learned how to communicate with people like in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, to me, laughter and music are like the two things that are like universal. So when you're communicating with people, like everybody can like understand music. Like even if somebody plays something, like in a different language, you can hear tone. You can hear like the feeling of music. So it communicates like a certain emotion with it. Same thing with with humor. Humor is relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Like when people are laughing together, there's no hostility. So that's kind of like like how I managed to I don't know, I guess defang people, and get them away from the fact that I was awkward was to use humor, and over time I got more proficient with it. I used to love watching stuff like like Martin and like the Fresh Prince like growing up. Now let's be honest, even on Martin's friends kind of sort of liked him, so he's not really like a good model for like day-to-day interactions with people. But the Fresh Prince became like one of my favorite shows because like the way that Will Smith's character was able to like relate to other people, it was always in a way where it was kind of like he was sliding humor in like punchlines, because life will give you a bunch of punchlines. And a lot of people just don't call them out. I became an expert at calling out the punchline in life that nobody else saw.
Right.
So when people were laughing, they're like, "Oh man, this guy, he's kind of cool. We can hang out because he's making me laugh."
Right.
So over time I just got more proficient with that. But by no means was I like the popular kid growing up. Nothing like that.
Right. I want to challenge you on something. These are some of the things I've been thinking about. Excuse me, lately. But the awkward thing. I believe, like and what you're saying. I was on the opposite end of the spectrum as far as being popular in school. In the school, in the neighborhoods, I was popular. And I will say, I said this in another interview, that shit is, you dealing with fake shit sometimes when you're popular. Fake people, fake shit. And you, from an awkward standpoint, you're only awkward because you don't know how to act around people. Yeah. And most people are acting like they this or that, and you are truly being you. And since you're truly being you, you can look at people like, is something wrong with me? Because everybody acting, and you're not playing a role that everybody playing.
Yeah, that's true. And it's funny you should like mention that because at one point I actually did get into theater. Mm-hmm. But that was something different just to try it. But in my day-to-day life, like you're absolutely right. Like I was me. Whether people accepted it or they didn't. Most of the time it was didn't, but. But later on, like I said, the more I studied, how people interacted with each other, and I mean like everybody, like how adults interact like with children, how children interact with adults, how people the same age with as me interacted with people the same age, how how the guys interacted with the women, how the women interacted. Like I'm watching like all this, and I'm kind of like in my head like cataloging like, okay, if I respond this way, then chances are I'm gonna get this reaction.
Mm-hmm.
If I respond this way, then I get this kind of reaction. So it was kind of like I was studying and kind of like putting it together, but I was still authentic. I always tried to stay authentic to myself. Like I never tried to create like a persona that I couldn't live up to.
Yes.
Yes. It was always about how can I be the most authentic me, without without becoming a social pariah.
Right,
You know?
right.
It's like you try to find like that balance. You
Most
know what I'm saying? Like there's
definitely.
gotta be like, there's gotta be like some cool, some smooth, like somewhere in there. But for the most part, it's like, okay, well, if you're awkward, then you're awkward. All right, whatever.
Right. It's funny you said I'm trying to figure out a way to be me, the best me, right?
Yeah.
And still, I guess, know how to do it with dealing with people. And a lot of people haven't figured that out. A lot of people just copy.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And paste.
Yeah, because I mean, I think everybody wants to be successful, and by successful, I don't necessarily mean money. I mean successful in your ability to have an upward trajectory all the time. Now you want to be able to get positive growth like all the time, or feel like you're climbing the mountain upward like all the time, like where you're going uphill. It's like, okay, I'm here now, I'm headed towards this. You might not always get that, but that's what everybody essentially wants. So that's always like the focus why people act the way they do. It's like everybody's trying to get to the next plateau, the next plane, whatever that may be. So whatever everybody's goal is, whether they have it concretely in their head at the time or not, like that's beside the point. It's always like how can I have a better tomorrow than what I got today. So I think that's what everybody's geared towards, even if they don't know what it is.
Let's go back a little bit. You brought up school, and you brought up you was one of the chocolate chips in the cookie. Tell me about your school experience. Break that down. Did you have to deal with any racism or any things like that? Or you always too young to really see race at that age?
I mean, I'd be lying if I said that, I didn't experience any. I mean, it wasn't to the degree of where, like anybody white was, trying to, let me back up a little bit. Okay, so there were a couple of kids, dropped N-bombs and all that. But it was, I noticed that every time they did it, it was always when I was like isolated. It was never around like a group of it was never within earshot of another black person. And since I was like, already awkward, it's like, okay, I'm awkward with, with a few black kids that's like in the class, and, I'm awkward and black as opposed to the white kids in the class. So it's like, okay, well now like I'm in this corner, so, cause I don't have like, it's like, I don't have like any crew like in school like that. So, for me, like anytime that I encountered, like any like racism, it was always like verbal. I think that's more what it was. It was kind of like, okay, well, I can say this to him because, like I know it's gonna hurt him, and I know that he don't really have like no backup. But I'm still gonna make sure that when I say this, when I drop this N-bomb, I'm not gonna say it within earshot of another black person, just in case.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I didn't experience like, huge waves of like overt racism. It's kind of like a lot of, what black people experience like nowadays is not necessarily like overt racism. I mean, it's still there, but, what most people get is, that institutional racism, that you don't really observe that as a kid because you don't really know how, all the pieces of society are like put together and like how that affects you. You can only get like, okay, this person called me this because I'm black. This person, tried to fight me because I'm black. This person, did something, they came at me directly, you know what I'm saying? But you don't really get, how insidious like racism is until you get older and you start to understand how the fabric of society is like put together. So
when you brought up your parents, you were saying that your father was basically the father of the neighborhood. What type of man was he? Go past that. What type of? Tell us about your father's character. What type of morals and things he installed in you to become the man that you are?
Oh, well, I mean, I can't say my father was. I can say my father is.
Oh, yeah, is. I'm sorry. I ain't wishing that on him.
He's still alive.
I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, my father, he's definitely like he's a hard worker. He definitely believes in, you should get out of life like, like what you put in. You know, he's got a lot of, you know, like high morals. I mean, he's not like, you know, like a choir kid or anything like that. You know, he's got a little bit of edge to him. I mean, he's got a little bit of temper, which I think I've inherited. But my dad, he's that type of person that will always focus on, you know, like at least trying to do the right thing. You know, it's kind of like he kind of like had a moral code that would make like the Huxtables like believable. Like we didn't have like Huxtable money or anything like that, but it was kind of like it was almost like he was trying to be that, but he's a little edgier than what what that would allow. Now I noticed like my father, he doesn't swear a lot. Now I think that kind of goes into like part of like his moral character. I mean, it's kind of like I think he didn't want to do it with me and my sister growing up because like we were children at the time.
Right.
Like now he doesn't cuss like a sailor or anything like that. But I mean, every now and then he'll say a little something just because we're his kids are grown now, so it's like he can meet us on that adult level. It's like, okay, I get it. It was still shocking like the first time like I heard it though.
Most definitely.
Because you're so used to like seeing your dad as like like this paragon of virtue and good moral behavior, and all of a sudden like he drops like an F-bomb. You're like, I mean, it kind of messed me up a little bit, and it kind of like threw me, but it was kind of cool at the same time because it's kind of like,
oh, he's human.
Yeah. It's kind of like, oh wow, like not only is he human, but I think he's gotten to the point of where he feels like not that his job as a parent is done, because once you're a parent, you're always a parent.
Most
like
definitely.
You're always there for your kids. But I think he's to the point of where he feels like, like I'm his only son, so I feel like his thought process is like, I've reached a point with my son where it's not that I don't have anything left to teach him, but he's a man, he's the man that I was trying to raise. Like, this is the point that I was trying to get him to where, he's able to like, fend for himself. He's able to, like handle like all his adult business. He's got, like morals and character and all this, he's a contributing member of society and all that, that kind of stuff. He's kind of reached the point of where he's like, it's like, I can be his friend now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because his character and who he is
intact.
Yeah, like that's set.
What about the other guys in your neighborhood you grew up with? How did their lives go?
I mean, it all depends on like who we're talking about. I mean,
if we did
all of us.
If we did a ratio of the guys that didn't have fathers versus rare like you, how did a lot of them other people turn out? And no names and nothing like that, but just
right.
Yeah.
Let me see. I mean, if I'm thinking about it, direct, like, I mean, out of everybody, I mean, most of them, like, I mean, we, a lot of us like lost contact. We all like went our separate ways. I mean, I moved to Atlanta,
right.
back in 2007. So, so a lot of them, like I'll hit them up on like like Facebook or social media occasionally. Like sometimes I will text, but like we don't really like interact like as much.
Most definitely.
So, but I do kind of get like an idea of like where everybody is at. Toledo's a very small city. It's not very like opportunity like oriented. So it's very like, I don't know, I won't say like crabs in a barrel, but it's kind of like that. Like where there's not a whole lot of like opportunity to go around unless you're like, okay, I gotta get out of here.
Right.
That was always my mindset. I was like, okay, if I'm gonna make this life happen, to a degree where I'm not, scraping and like I'm put together, like I gotta get out of here. So everybody that got out, I think is doing better than the people that stayed.
Okay, I understand.
So the people that are there, I mean, I don't think anybody's like like homeless or destitute or anything like that. Everybody seems like they they're at least like getting by. But the people that escaped the city, most of them are doing much better.
Most definitely. I would watch your mother. What type of woman was she?
Let's see, there you go with that was stuff again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So my mom's still alive.
No, when I say was, I'm talking about like, because I know you're older now. So I'm saying, talking about was in the sense of when you was being raised. That's not me. But not like she passed away.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Right, I know. I'm just teasing. But, yeah, my mother, to me, my mother never really, to me, in my eyes, like, she never really changed, like, the core of, like, who she is. You know, it's kind of like everybody, like, over time, you know, you make, like, small adjustments, but the character is always the same. Like, my mother was always, like, the same person to me. Like, she's, like, the sweetest person, like, ever. You know, like, I know, you know, like, sometimes, you know, it's like, sometimes in our community, like, we'll get, like, you know, the moms that, you know, they care about you, but they kind of harsh. Like, my mom was, like, the complete opposite of that. Like, she was firm, but you could tell that everything that she ever did and every time, like, she always addressed us, it was, like, always out of love. Like, even, like, whether it was, you know, for something that we accomplished or it was time that, like, you know, we disappointed her, like, you could always tell that everything that she did always came from a place of love. Like, there was, like, no question, like, even back then. You know, my mother is, you know, she's a working mom. She's still working. But the most awesome thing that I always think about, like, with my mom is how strong my mom is without ever having to say it. Because, and I put this in a poem at one point. I said that the real, how do I say it in a poem? I said the real strong women are too busy demonstrating it to take time saying it. And my mother is, like, she's one of the strongest women, like, I've ever seen. Like, I mean, she could very possibly well be, like, the strongest woman that I've ever met. You know, and the fact that she's like my mom just is like bonus. Like, right, you know, right. Like if I'm, like, if people had, like, a choice to, like, build, like, you know, their own custom mom, that's it. You know, like, even people that, you know, like, had, like, dope moms. Like, I had a chance to meet, like, you know, like, all my friends' moms. You know what I'm saying? Like, got along with everybody's, you know, mom. Like, you know, I met a couple fathers, not too many, but I was always cool with, like, everybody's parents. You know, like, everybody's parents was always, like, dope to me.
What's up?
But even a lot of, like, my friends were like, yo, like, I love my moms. Like, I love my mom. Like, they got to preface it. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, but your mom is just so awesome. It's like, man. It's like, I'm not saying I want to replace my mom, but, like, if I could get, like, her as, like, an auntie or something, you know, like, yeah. You know, and to me, like, I got it, you know, like, I understood, you know, like, yo, my mom she's that person, she's dope.
Do any of your parents write poetry?
Yeah, my dad does. My dad is a multi-talented artist. You know, and I'll more on, you know, everything else that he does later. But my dad does write. You know, he started writing, like, when he was very young, and according to him, he has, like, a whole bunch of stuff that he wrote. You know, and, you know, I say according to him because I haven't seen it, but my mom co-signed that, you know, my dad writes. So I was like, all right, well, he got a co-signer, so I'm guessing that he writes.
Right.
And I guess he left all of, like, the stuff that was, like, in his book over at his parents' place. Like, I guess he left it, like, up in the attic or whatever. And I guess they cleaned out the attic at one point, and he doesn't know, like, where any of his old stuff is.
Oh, man.
And he got away from writing for, like, a long time. And he just recently got back. He picked up the pen again, you know, just because I'm doing it. You know, he was like, you know what? He's like, you know what, son? Like, I think I'm gonna get back into writing.
Right.
And I looked at him, I was like, oh, for real? Like, you know, so am I actually finally gonna get to, like, see some of my dad's art? Because I've never seen or heard, like, any of it. You know, it's like, it's there, you know, like, he's done it, but, like, I've never had a chance to, like, partake in the art, which, you know, kind of, like, sad about, because, you know, it's kind of like you want to see, like, where your artistic roots come from, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my dad does write. He just wrote something recently. He hasn't shared it yet because I guess he's still, like, tweaking it. And I don't know. since he's been to like my show before and he's heard me like perform and all that, I think it kind of like intimidated him because it's like when you take so much time away from the game,
right.
And, when you jump back in, you be like, well, like if my son is spitting this hard, then I don't want to get out here and come with the weak sauce.
Right.
And I told him, I'm like, Dad, like you took decades off. Like I understand that, it's all good, but can you share something?
Was he getting on stage back in the day when he was writing? Or you don't know?
Yeah. Matter of fact, he was on stage a lot from the stories that my parents tell me. He was on stage a lot, but not as a poet. He was on stage as a musician.
What did he play?
According to him, he played like a couple of different instruments. He used to be able to play the piano, which we had a piano at one point. I think he can play guitar, and I want to say he can play like a couple like woodwind instruments. I think clarinet, but I think he can play about maybe like 3 or 4 instruments. Now again, I've not had the opportunity to hear any of that, but he did have like the clarinet still, because I think my sister had picked it up at one point, and she started taking lessons and she started playing it. So it's kind of like, okay, well, if he's got the instrument and both of my parents say that that he could play like back in the day, then I mean that's enough proof for me. You got the instrument and you got a cosigner. It's like, come on, Dad, like I want to hear something. I want to hear like some of your art. I just haven't yet.
So what else he did? Could you say he played different instruments? He did write poetry?
Yeah, according to what he tells me, like he was in a band and like they had like like radio play, and they were doing like live performances, and they were doing touring and all that. And I want to say like right before he and my mom actually like got married, that was kind of like the crossroads for like what he had to decide on, like what he was gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, it's like, okay, if I go this way, then I keep the band together. You know what I'm saying? I keep this bachelor-ish kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going hard like in the art. If I go this way, then I gotta I'm going like married, the woman I want to marry. We're gonna have kids, and we're gonna do like the family thing. But I gotta hang up the art because for him, his art meant that he had to do it like as big as possible. I don't think he was into like doing like local like venues like it had to be like a crowd. So for him, it was like the bigger the crowd was, like the better. So it was like he was either all or nothing for him. So it's like he chose the family thing, so he hung up the art.
Do he have any recordings of his of him playing?
I've asked a lot, and according to him, he had some recordings, and all that stuff was in the parents' attic. And that was back when what was that, like 8 tracks and like records and all that. Like that's back in the day. So it don't take a whole lot to lose that kind of stuff, or to scratch it up, or for that kind of stuff to be damaged. So I mean, I have no idea like where any of that stuff is. I mean, if anybody has like any recordings, I mean, he hasn't told me who.
Yeah, it's crazy you said that he